Sorry, it's a little warm in here. The movie people came in and put these little set dressing around the top, so it's like the windows don't open all the way now. But please welcome Beth Grant.
Yay!
I am so excited because I don't know if you remember this, but back many years ago, 2001. Yeah, this is you don't remember.
We weren't married, were we?
We weren't. No. There was a very brief time.
It's possible.
I was working on a little show called Judging Amy, and I was doing the extras casting of Judging Amy, and I saw that she was on the call sheet, and I got so excited, and because I've been president of the Beth Grant fan club for years, and we had a production meeting that afternoon, and you walked out of stage 16, and I went running over to you, and I said, "I'm the president of the Beth Grant fan club," and you said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I had a fan club." I'm so excited that you're here. The nice thing about me getting to plan these talkbacks is that I get to book people that that I love and get to I've admired for years. You've had a very extensive career, and you have that wonderful niche of being able to fit into any. If you wouldn't mind, could we take the conversation outside? Oh, thank you. You have that wonderful ability to slink into any role that you want.
Slink would be accurate.
But one of the very first roles that I remember you from, and how I became president of Beth Grant Fan Club, was Flatliners.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because I've watched that movie 10,000 times. I had a VHS tape, and every Sunday after church I would go home and watch it, because in Joel Schumacher, that was one of the movies that made me want to be a filmmaker, because it was so beautifully lit, it was a really interesting story, and a great cast, but you played housewife.
Yeah. There's a lot of story to that one. I've got a story for everything. I'm from the South.
Well, go with that one.
I love that you mentioned that movie, because it's about redemption and forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, and so I love the themes of it. But Joel and I were in acting class together at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, and he was a great supporter of mine. And I remember doing a scene from Rose Tattoo, and when it was over, he was standing and cheering. He's a very enthusiastic man, lovely man. And Mally Finn was the casting director, who's passed away. But Mally brought me in, and I assumed that Joel had requested me. But when I walked in, he went, "Oh, what a surprise!" So you never know who your friends are. But he was delighted that I came in. And he told me the story of this monologue. Are you familiar with the movie Flatliners? It's that would be a great one to talk about, really.
Yeah.
It really would.
Yeah.
In theory, all movies should be something good to screen here and talk about, but it doesn't always work out. Sorry to say. I can name a couple. But that monologue, it's at the very beginning of the movie, and I play a housewife, a mom, who has lost her child, and God speaks to her and says, I'm not ready for you yet, I want you to go back. And so I leave my child and I go back to my life and my husband. And that monologue was written verbatim from one of Joel Schumacher's relatives. True story. It's the only part of the movie that was a verbatim true story. So I was so honored to be able to do it. And I have the gift of faith. I mean, I said that to somebody a couple of months ago, and he said, "Yeah, you do." I said, it is a gift. Because, believe me, my brain, yesterday I went to see a science exhibit, and I got all torn up. I just, ooh, facts. Don't let the facts interfere with my faith. And that feels like, well, that's not right, because I do have a high IQ, and I'm an intelligent person, educated person, and I can be both, and I don't have to be afraid of science. But I was a little confronted yesterday on this outsider science exhibit, and so I've been thinking about all these things, and then coming here, and then last night I went to see people like us, and the church is like a major character in the movie.
Right here, this room.
I thought, man, am I supposed to be there tomorrow? And I was christened a Methodist in Fort Payne, Alabama. I can't believe Kathy is from Fort Payne. I mean, where are you from? Alabama.
Huntsville.
Huntsville, so that's not too far. And my family is largely an Alabama family, from Chattahoochee Valley, and I think my grandmother was born in Goodwater. My mother was born in Sweetwater. We liked our water. But anyway, but back to Flatliners. Jan de Bont was the DP of that movie that was so beautifully lit, and they smoked us to death. It was the first time I'd been in a film that used that smoke that now is pretty commonplace, and I thought, what is this going to look like? But it is gorgeous, and it diffuses the light, so it does make for a beautiful movie. And then later, funny little tidbit is that Joel Schumacher offered me a role in a John Grisham movie, not Time to Kill, which I did do, but another one, maybe The Firm or something. And I couldn't do it because it conflicted with Speed, which was directed by his DP, Jan de Bont. So I had to call him and say, well, Jan's got me. I said, can't you guys get together and work it out so I can do both? It didn't work out, but I love that movie, and that's the story of that little scene.
That's awesome. So, so normally I start off with, so you grew up in Alabama.
Yeah. I actually didn't grow up there, though.
But you were all over the South. It was
we moved around. I always say Daddy was looking for a brighter day. And he grew up a Methodist in LaGrange, Georgia. And I said Grant is there are a lot of Grants that are Methodist, and I love that we're in Grant Hall. It's, what is God trying to tell me? And my grandmother was quite devout. They always referred to her as a noble woman. My grandfather was an old country doctor in Georgia. And he had gotten a grant from the state of Georgia to go to medical school. And LaGrange is a very interesting town because it was built after the Civil War. And so it's a lot of Victorian houses, and then there's some antebellum mansions. But a lot of people think it was around during the Civil War, but it wasn't. And it was a planned community. And so they were, I guess, fairly probably second, third generation moving in there in the early 1900s. They lived right on Broad Street in a little gingerbread house, and he died during the Depression. And so my grandmother had her, a garden and, chickens, and did it all. She was a single mom of 4 kids growing up in the Depression, and I admire her, and they always said she had great faith. So I feel like they referred to her as a noble woman. So I come from people. I guess that's where my gift of faith comes from, probably.
So how did you go from, because we have so much to go, how did you jump from Beth Grant and South to acting? What was the moment where you're like, I want to do this? What was that?
There is a moment. There's an actual moment. I was about 3 years old, and my Uncle Billy had been in the Navy and had been in Korea. And he was gorgeous. I always liked handsome men. And I still do. I've been married, 26 years, but my husband and I have a joke that we can still look. And as long as we bring it home to each other. But he was handsome, and he was in his Navy uniform. And my mother had taught me this song, Oh, Where Have You Been, Billy Boy, Billy Boy? And so I was 3 years old, and I was dancing and singing, and he was listening and loving it and laughing, and then at the end he applauded, and I was hooked. I wanted that for the rest of my life. And it's funny, I loved your sermon so much. It was just, it touched me in every way. And to reference movie, I mean, it's, I appreciate the movie for all those reasons that you talked about, but I'd never heard it expressed, and it just means the world to me. In fact, I've asked for a copy of it. I want to send it to Harvey Weinstein because I think this movie could have yet another mission, because it could, now that it's available to people, it could, perhaps it could kind of witness to people, which isn't that the greatest thing. I'm just very excited about the possibility. But what was that thing?
So 3 years old, and then you jump into you studied acting.
And my mother was a Southern belle, a very Blanche DuBois. She'd been a great beauty, and all the boys had been after her. At least that's what she said. She was beautiful. She was very, very beautiful. I'm sure that's true. But she wanted to be an actress and had never pursued it. And so as soon as she saw that I responded well, to her coaching me, she really filled my head with a lot of dreams. And Daddy was just the opposite. He'd grown up in this Victorian family, and so I had both sides. And it's funny, the older I get, the more like Daddy I get. But I really wanted, my mom to love me. I wanted her approval, and she loved a tall tale. I used to just make up stories and come home with them, and she just would always love them. So it was largely to get my mom's approval and the joy of being appreciated. You know, it's still so shocking to me that in church we all applaud now, because, you know, it just wasn't that way when I grew up. And I want to celebrate that, you know. I know Mark outside of the church, and you know, applause can be a celebration where we're all just celebrating. It doesn't have to be about ego, I think. And but it's a new thought for me, and but I like it. I like it. It's something new, because applause is great. I mean, human beings were so funny that we do this thing. Sometimes I think of us as aliens, and I think, you know, it's such if we went to Mars and they were doing something with their fins, their feet, it'd be kind of cool.
So let's get you into your first couple of roles. So you went to college, studied acting there.
I did.
What happened after college?
Well, I had an excursion to New York City, a brief one. I ran away with a hippie painter on the Greyhound bus when I was 19. And people was like, well, you were 19, that's not running away. I said, oh, yes, it was. I'm the first person from my family on either side to leave the South and stay gone. Everybody else went back. I bet you're one of the few too, right?
My parents, yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty rare. And they were so shocked out of their minds. I still can't even imagine. My daughter's 19 now. And I think of her taking off to New York City by herself. I can't imagine. But you know, you're just young, fearless. And but then when I got there, I was really humbled by New York City. And I was even scared to call. Like, I remember calling the American Academy and then hanging up. And I wouldn't even buy Variety magazine. I was so scared. And so I went back to college and graduated, and then went back to New York a bit more prepared. Not much, but somewhat prepared. At least I had a degree and I'd studied more. And so I went to New York, and in New York I was pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know if I should say this, but this isn't for press. Oh, you do have a thing. Yeah, maybe I won't tell the whole truth. But let's just say I had a wild and woolly experience in New York City. You know what I'm saying? And, but I was certainly humbled by my behavior eventually. And I came to LA, and you know, I'm married for the third time. My second husband lives right up the hill. And but you know, I remember once talking to a minister about my past and kind of like feeling really bad and wishing I could change the past, you know, which of course you can't do. And he looked up at a cross and he said, you know, Jesus came from whores and thieves, and you know, and I thought that was pretty cool. And he said, you know, why do you think God chose that journey for Jesus? Why do you think Jesus had that life? So that we could all, you know, understand about forgiveness. And so I had a pretty wild and woolly time until I turned 30, and then I woke up and started really in earnest seeking a good life. And I will say that my first God that I started praying to at that time was kind of equals MC squared. And that then led to a personal God. And so now, you know, I loved what you said about when you were asking the question about who are you. And I do want to be a person of faith who is seeking to be good and to follow Jesus' path. That's what I want. And a couple weeks ago, I woke up one morning, and for some reason I had this thought of, well, when I am on my deathbed, because I feel like I'm kind of in the last third of my life. I know that sounds so dramatic, but I'm 62. I'm going to be 63. And, you know, I hope to live to be 150, but, you know. So anyway, I asked myself, I said, you're on your deathbed, what are those memories? And so I was lying in bed, and I was going through all these different beautiful memories of, you know, times with my mom and dad, times with my daughter, when my daughter was born, this and that and the other. And not one single career memory came up. Not one! And I surprised myself, because it's been great, and I love my career, and it is like being a minister in a way, because you are channeling God. You are, at least I really try to be of service, and I really want to tell stories that help change people's lives, and I'm very committed to that, and I pray a lot. I remember this one movie I did. For some reason, every time the AD would open my trailer, I was on my knees. And so she said, after the third time, she said, "Are you a Christian?" I said, yeah, but not that kind, not what you're thinking. I mean, she thought I was crazy. But, so I do really, even though I think that my career is, you know, a true vocation, it still pales next to the experiences I've had with people and the love that I've shared and family and community. So that just happened a couple of weeks ago. So thank you for saying that today. It was really beautiful. Really beautiful.
Well, so when you, speaking of your career, when you came out to LA, you said you were 30 at the time.
I came out when I was 25.
25.
And I moved here in 1975. And I was 25 years old, but it was, I had 5 wild and woolly years here too. I had 5 in New York and 5 out here.
Well, when you first, IMDb says that one of your first credits was BJ and the Bear.
Yes!
Is that true?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. BJ and the Bear. I remember this friend of mine, I said, I don't know about this little movie, and he said, you got Claude Akins and a monkey, are you kidding me? It's going to be a hit. And I played Mary the waitress, and I named my daughter Mary, you know, after Jesus' mama, but my aunt was named Mary, and then Michael's family had some Marys in it, and I did appreciate that character's name was Mary. I did love that.
So one of the things, we have a lot of aspiring actors here, and then a lot of aspiring actors who will watch it, of course. But there's a great story about you and Rain Man, so we'll get you up to that story. So you did BJ and the Bear, God, the Universe, and a Hot Fudge Sundae.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Santa Barbara, Mr. Belvedere, and then around 1998, you get the call for Rain Man. Do you remember doing theater, and you were wondering why you weren't getting cast? Because this is very important. I used to be a casting director. And there's a thing about actors being true to who they are, and knowing who they are, and knowing their type. And you were doing theater, and do you remember the story and Rain Man? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, I think I know. You're talking about casting.
Yes.
Understanding my casting. Okay, so I may cry here. I'm just.
Oh no.
I may not. But when I was little, and I wanted to be a movie star. I never wanted to be an artist. I didn't care about being a channel of love, peace, and truth. Just wanted to be rich and famous and have everybody worship and adore me. I mean, you know. And I loved characters like Joan Crawford and Marilyn Monroe. And I used to imitate Marilyn Monroe. And I mean, good grief. And Joan Crawford did this movie called Humoresque, where she was this alcoholic patroness of the arts, and she had an affair with John Garfield, and finally she commits suicide in the ocean in a long black dress. And I'm this little tomboy in Georgia in dungarees watching this movie on black and white TV, and I just thought, oh, that's what I want to be, an alcoholic committing suicide. I think, what is wrong with that picture? And so my casting was, you know, askew, because who I am, as you can see, I'm this earthy girl with big hands and big feet and a square jaw and, you know, small lips. And my mother, who was this beauty, used to say to me, you know, if we could just get that knot trimmed off of your nose and clip the little end and put some silicone shots in your lips and trim your chin a little bit, why, you'd be perfectly beautiful. Who wouldn't be perfectly beautiful? That amount of work, you know. And for some reason, though, I just never wanted to be anybody except who I was. I was, you know, I didn't buy into that. And but at the same time, I was delusional because I thought that I would be able to play those roles, you know. And so this strange kind of conflict within me. Standing up for who I was, but then wanting to be somebody else. And finally, my acting teacher, after I had done these roles in class, that, you know, Elizabeth Taylor roles, Marilyn Monroe roles, and one day he said, why do you keep trying to be a Rolex watch when you're the salt of the earth? And I said, well, I'm not trying to be a Rolex. And he said, yes, you are. And he said, well, why do you look down your nose at Anna Magnani and Colleen Dewhurst and Maureen Stapleton? I said, I don't. I think they're wonderful actors. And he said, yes, you do, because you don't think the roles that they do are good enough for you. And so I thought about that a a lot. And then, I don't know if you know this whole, do you know the whole part of the story going up to Big Sur?
Yep.
He knows it all. He did it.
I'm Todd, the president of Beth Grant. I was going to have a t-shirt done.
But we have work to do. We'll go on the road now. During that period, I finally accepted myself as a character actress. And it was painful. And the first scene I did was from Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, playing Flo, the waitress. And after the scene, the whole class stood up and cheered, and and I had tears in my eyes. And everybody thought, oh, I was just so humble and thrilled. I wasn't. I was miserable. I knew it was true, but I didn't want to do it. And my teacher came up to me and he said, "It hurts, doesn't it?" And I said, "It does." And then I got a couple of great jobs. Before Rain Man, I was in Picnic at the Amundsen, not playing Rosemary, not playing the mother, playing Irma Cronkite, and the one with the new dress. And then doing theater, as he said, around town. And then I got to play Mrs. Bassett from Summer and Smoke with Christopher Reeve and Christine Lottie at the Amundsen. And I was just miserable in that role. She was kind of the comic relief, and my husband was also in it, and he'd gone to Juilliard with Christopher Reeve, and he was in love with Christine Lottie, and I would, barrel on the stage with him proposing to Christine Lottie, talking about Bastille Day, and just, comic relief. And so when that was over, when that play ended, we went up to Big Sur, and I was also trying to have a baby, and I was by then 38 years old. My career came late, slow and late. And I was up in Big Sur, and one night we were sleeping in the hatchback, his little Honda, or whatever car it was, and I banged my head on the roof, and I was just miserable, and I got out of the car, and I hiked up to the top of this hill in Big Sur, and I screamed at God, and I just said, "Fine, okay, I'll be a character actress. And I'll have children or I won't have children. Whatever you want, just help me." And I always think, with the old joke about God, a man plans, God laughs, and then, but I felt heard that night, and went back, went to sleep. Next day, we're hiking through Big Sur, and we come across this cabin, and it's where they had raised the family of, the founders of Big Sur had lived. And it's this tiny little cabin, and the woman had raised, the men too, but I'm thinking of the mom, of course, raised 12 kids in this little cabin. And I'm looking at that cabin, and I said to my husband, they have never really done a pioneer woman, because that was hard. I don't know how they did it. And so we leave Big Sur, we're driving down PCH, and we stop to check messages back before cell phones and stuff. And my answering machine is from my agent. She says, "You have to come back to LA, you have an audition for Dustin Hoffman's new movie, playing a pioneer woman." Talk about knowing that. It gives me cold chills now. So I thought, okay then. I'm doing it my way. No makeup, stringy hair, house dress. I'm doing it my way. And, I'm leaving out one important detail. I had a meditation that I did. My husband had taught me this visual meditation where you go in and you have a guide. Oh, so this is kind of a funny story, too. I love being able to talk about this stuff. I tell you, it's very personal, but it just feels like, you get it? But anyway, he was teaching me this meditation, and you have this guide that comes to you, and you ask the guide the name. So I asked the guy the name, and it was Jesus. And my husband said, "What's his name?" And I said, "Jesus." And he said, "Ask him again." He got a little nervous. So I said, "He wants to know your name." He said, "Tell him Ralph." And so I said Ralph, but I knew what. And so in this meditation, when I was having trouble accepting myself as a character actress, I went to Jesus, a.k.a. Ralph, and I said, "Take me to the energy that's blocking me from my higher good, that's stopping me from accepting who I really am." So he took me to this white clapboard house out in the country, knock on the door, and who comes to the door but me? No makeup, ponytail, house dress, and I say to me, "Come in. We've been waiting for So I go in the house and walk around, and then I leave, and it reminds me of my Aunt Bookie's house, one of my favorite aunts, and I leave, and I come out of the meditation, and I get it, that, oh, wait a minute. These people, these women, need me to tell their stories. You know, at the time I remember thinking, Farrah Fawcett can't tell their stories because they need this face, this square jaw, and these thin lips, and big hands, and big feet, and big butt, and all that stuff, to tell their stories. And so then I started realizing that being a character actor is a high, high calling, because these are the forgotten people, largely, and these are the people that, you know, people don't usually write leads about, but their stories are important too. So if I can serve those stories and those archetypes, what a great calling that would be. Okay, so now, I determined to go in to this audition. So I passed Barry Levinson in the hallway on the way to the audition, and I saw him do a double take. And I really think, to this day, that's when I got the job, because I was so fierce, and I didn't have my makeup on. Anyway, so I go in, and the casting director said to me, "Don't be afraid of being strong." Well, little did he know. So I did the audition, and then I left. I remember going to lunch with some friends, and I said, "I'll never get that job, because I did it strong, and the way those real pioneer women were." Well, they called immediately, you know, and I booked it. And I heard later that they had auditioned 700 people across the country, because they thought they would hire it locally, you know, and they just couldn't find that person. So you know that's divine intervention. You know that, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the Presbyterian in me, but because my mom was Presbyterian, but I just know that that was all meant to be. And how this genius, we'll never understand how this universe works with our finite brains. I don't think I'll never understand it, but I trust it, because how all of that stuff happened to get me to that point of surrender on that mountain, and that they were looking for that part. And, I mean, it's crazy. But so it's a good reminder for me to tell that story, because, and so pretty much ever since then, I've accepted my casting, and I've accepted the honor of playing those roles, like in The Artist. You know, I love that character, and I love that. I mean, I have to admit, I was a little surprised that at the auction she wasn't visible. He covered me so much. You know, you do these movies, and they shoot you so much, you start thinking you're the star of the movie. They do this little thing called editing, and so when I first saw it in New York, you know, they treated me like a queen through that whole publicity campaign, and I was at the New York Film Festival premiere, and oh, I just couldn't wait for my 10 minutes to come on, and it was like, you know, oh well. But that character is very important, because it's that payoff of when he's, I mean, that is his surrender. That is when he gives up, and then, you know, retreats into alcoholism and self-pity and suicidal, and then, you know, finally surrenders to help and to love. It's a beautiful story in that way, and so it's a very important role, and that character is very important. So I've learned that all of those roles are important, and you know, I still try to get leads. I'm not going to kid you. I didn't want to do The Artist, because I said, well, good grief, that's the smallest role in the world, you know? And they wanted me to audition on top of it, and my husband reminded me, you know, of what my job is, and that silent films are great works of art, and he sat me down in the den and showed me some silent movies, and how great the acting was back then, and how they bring so much in silence. And so then I got very excited about it, and I happily auditioned, and I was thrilled to do it and learned so much. And I was directing a short at the time, and I took all the dialogue away because I was so inspired by it. And in fact, I was thinking I'd love to do a screening here for you guys if you'd like. It's definitely my voice. I'm very, very proud of this little film, and we did it for, you know, $4,000, and it's a 13-minute film, so maybe we could show it, and I could get some of the people to come, and we could... Yeah, we were actually talking about doing a little short film festival here, so yeah. Oh, great. Well, I would love to bring it. I'm very proud of it, and I think it's touching. And it's definitely about acceptance and surrender, and hopefully all these 5 women's lives are changed. I mean, I'm trying to do the right thing, so... Anyway, that was my little journey accepting myself, but I still kick and scream. The ego, like I said, it comes up, and you know, I was saying to someone earlier, you know, ego's not my amigo. Edging God out. Edging God out. I try to remember, but it comes up. And I do have a manager now that's trying to, you know, find larger roles for me. But recently, I'm in this new series, hopefully it's a series, a pilot by Brian Fuller, who did Pushing Daisies. And he's a very spiritual guy.
Oh, he's great.
My gosh, he did
and it's the greatest cast on the planet.
Oh, Eddie Izzard. And
Jerry O'Connell, Portia de Rossi, Cheyenne Jackson.
Oh, Cheyenne Jackson. I mean.
And is it picked up, was it just a pilot or is it picked up the series?
It hasn't been picked up yet.
It's Mockingbird Lane, it's the Munsters reboot.
And with Brian Fuller's, you know, quirky, wonderful take on it.
Who did Pushing Daisies and Dead Like Me. And
Wonder Falls.
Yeah.
But Wonder Falls, if y'all don't know Wonder Falls,
That's the best show.
I mean, and talk about a spiritual show. I mean, here's this girl that does not want to be a good person, and the universe has another idea. And so it's a very, I think, extremely spiritual show. And that's kind of what we, in our family, what happens is, no matter what goes wrong, it always turns out to be for the good. And so when we have a disappointing thing happen in our family, we'll say, Wonder Falls! And it reminds us that, well, wait, the story's not over yet. Maybe it's going to turn out to be a good thing. But so I'm thrilled to work with Brian to talk about ego deflation. It's a character that I did for him on Wonder Falls. I did the same character on Pushing Daisies. He wrote this for me. And they wanted to go a different way. They wanted to cast it ethnic, which is great. I mean, I believe in affirmative action. How am I going to argue with that? I said, well, if they want to go that way, then they should. And then my manager just said, well, you just got to audition. You just got to get an audition. And my ego's going, for a part already done, let them look at the tape. But I did audition. I showed up, and I did the best I could. And I told Brian, I said, just tell me what to do. Whatever you need, I'll do it. And we had a great experience. The director came in.
Who was the director?
Brian Singer.
Brian Singer.
X-Men.
Yeah, for X-Men. He did a TalkBack.
Oh, he did? Oh, great. Well, he's a cool guy. I mean, he's a brainiac boy. So we worked really hard, and we got a great piece of tape, and they took it to NBC, and they said, okay, she has the part, but we don't want it to be a regular yet, you know, because we want to save money. And you think of what they're spending money on in this poor little character role. So they said, guest star. And then they didn't even want to give me extra money for that. So I took, you know, a top of the show, guest star on a pilot, a role that was written for me, a role I'd already done. So ego deflation at depth. But I had best time in the world. I love Brian. I hope it gets picked up.
Yeah.
I hope I get to do it. Brian says I'll do 7 out of 10 of the first 10. So, you know, I just can't get into that stuff. I just have to remember to be of service, be of service, be of service. But sometimes it's not easy.
So before we go to questions, I want to go over some of your big iconic roles. And we already talked about Flatliners, and then you did Time to Kill again with Joel Schumacher.
Yeah.
Very difficult role as
very difficult role. I was actually in Two on Food, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, and we were having our premiere in New York, and my daughter was almost 3, and we were having the best time in New York. We were staying at the Park Meridian with a swimming pool on the roof, and just, I get this script, and you open the first page, which is that horrible scene where these rednecks, you know, abused this little African-American girl, and I was just horrified. I hadn't read the book. And I closed the script, and I called my agent. I said, this is Joel. Please say yes, but I can't read this script right now. I just don't want to go there. And so when I got a chance, I called Joel, and I said, how do I play the mother to these boys? How do I testify for them? You know, I don't know how to do this role. And he said, it's your fault. And I went, oh, okay, got it. I understood it. He said, you work cleaning the school. Your husband was an alcoholic. You weren't there for them. They were latchkey kids. It's your fault. So I had no problem playing that role. I understood that. So.
And Tu Ong Fu was right before this. And you were in class with Patrick Swayze, correct?
Yes.
And did he tell you something?
Oh, yes. See, what good research. Wow.
Very
You're a filmographer.
I'm fond of useless information.
It's useful today.
It's useful today.
Well, we call him Buddy. It's always so I can't get Patrick out of my mouth, and yet I feel like I'm name dropping when I call him Buddy. So it's always that dilemma. But we called him Buddy in class, and he and I had worked on Virginia Woolf together, and it was right during that process when I was accepting myself as a character actress, and that Darlene Flugel, who was this gorgeous blonde, was playing Honey. And one day at rehearsal, I mean, Buddy and the guy, Cal Bartlett, that was playing George, were just flirting with her and just giggling around her. They were just silly around her. And so I got my feelings hurt and started crying. And I said, see, it's just the way it is. The blondes always get all the attention. And Buddy came over and he said, you know, Beth, don't you know that Colleen Dewhurst is beautiful? And that you are beautiful in your own way? And okay. And it helped me. You know, it helped me see a different kind of beauty, like Rembrandt's paintings. Those people are beautiful. So it really helped me in that acceptance. And so fast forward, we're doing Two on Food. And I'm playing Loretta, the town drunk. His daddy called her Baby Ugly. Oh. I mean, you know, and it's one of those roles. But then the boys come to town, you know, and they redo the town, and they dress us up, and they put me in feathers and a hairdo and makeup. And so I had this scene where I struck down the stairs, and I was really camping it up, and Buddy came over, and he said, I don't know, I don't want to give you direction, but maybe this is sort of like that day in rehearsal in class. And I went, so instead of camping it up, I came down the stairs vulnerable and very moved to feel beautiful. And they actually didn't have time to do the coverage, so then it goes to my back. But had you seen my face, you would have seen the tears because, you know, he gave me that direction. So I'm sure that's what you're right. And then we later did Donnie Darko together. And it was so interesting, that audition, because I had gotten 2 scripts that day. We were on our way to vacation in San Diego, and I got a Horton Foote play and Donnie Darko. And I didn't want a script that day. I wanted to go on vacation. And I said, oh, I'm just going to turn them down. And my husband said, no, you're not. He's been there for me a lot. He said, you got to read the scripts. So I stayed. They went on vacation. I stayed home, and I read the Horton Foote play first and called my agent and said, of course I want to do that. World premiere, day Emily married. And then I said, I'll read the script tonight. So I finished reading it, which is totally a Christ myth. I don't care what anybody says about Donnie Darko, including the writer, because he doesn't think it's true. But it is. The reason the kids love that movie so much is because that is the story of sacrifice and his choice at the end to sacrifice his life for that young girl so that she can live, so that she can have a life. What is that? But you know. So at the end of the script, I'm reading it. I'm all by myself. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm crying, and I realize I'm standing in the middle of my bed. I want to do this project so bad. And so by the next day, when I went in there to play Kitty Farmer, who I understood completely because I can get self-righteous like that. I know that she's well-intentioned and that she's just scared and she's trying so hard to find answers. And she's found this, you know, she's put someone before God, this guy, and she's flawed, but she really is trying, you know, to find her way. So I understood her, so I blew into the room for that audition. I was just like, and so we're going along, and so I do the scene, and then I made a mistake, and I said miracles in motion instead of sparkle motion. I said miracles in motion. And then I said, you've got to give me this part, which I have never done. And then they did, and later the producer told me, they said, as soon as I walked in the room, I had the part, because I was so fervent, you know. And so we got to work together again, and he got to be my hero for one last time. And he was a very special person. I loved him very much. And his memorial service was a huge celebration with music and dancing and love. And they gave us pictures of him, you know, with his shirt off, riding bareback on a palomino. I mean, it was just, yeah, that's our buddy, the way we want to remember him. So.
Del Shores.
Oh, Del.
Del Shores. You've probably seen you've been with him for forever. He started off as a play. What was the first play that you did with him?
Well, actually, the first one I did was Sordid Lies. He had seen me do a workshop doing that scene from Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, that same scene. I had tried to do one of those workshops where you pay money to have casting directors see you. I did one. I didn't care for it. I don't know why. It just hit me the wrong way that actors shouldn't have to pay, you know, to have their work seen. And then also I got lucky, and I was starting to be in plays and things were starting to happen. But I did one, and Del happened to be there. He was also an actor. and he had seen it, and apparently he tells me that he had tried to get in touch with me for a cheat, his first play, but he didn't know my name. And then Daddy's Dying, I don't know how hard he really looked for me, but he says he looked for me. And then one day he was, my agent was actually producing Daddy's Dying for Edinburgh Festival, and he was in her office and he saw my picture. And he said, "Who is that woman?" And so then he took me to lunch and we got to know each other, and then he wrote Sordid Lives. It started as a short story, and he sent it to me, and it was called something about quitting smoking or something. I can't remember the name of it, and I loved it, and then he sent me, "Bye. I am a talker." And so then it became a one act, and we did a reading of it, and then it became the full-length play. And during that process, that's when he came out. And so he called me, and he said, "Beth, I'm gay." And I said, "Oh, I love you so much." And I just don't know what else to say. And so that was it. That was how he came out to me, which was better than my first friend that came out, because I just didn't understand, you know, because I'm a different generation. And when he called, I said, "Oh, you are not." And he said, "Well, I just wanted to let you know." And I thought, "Oh God, maybe he is." So I learned the hard way to listen, and that maybe somebody's actually trying to tell me something. So I did listen to Dell, and I did respect, you know, that he, you know, the way my life's path, and All in the Family helped him, and I think Sordid Lives has helped a lot of people. So yeah.
And you just worked with him on Trials and Tribulations.
Of a Trailer Trash Housewife, which is now called Blues for Willadine, where I play a battered wife. And it's a pretty cool cast, Dale Dickey and Octavia Spencer and me. So
that's a great cast. We had Dale here last year too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, he's great. And in fact, I'm going to see him later today.
Dale Dickey?
Yeah. No, Dale Short.
Dale Short.
Dale Dickey.
Yeah.
Love Dale Dickey. I mean, she's just fabulous.
Yeah.
She's fabulous. But anyway, so we did the movie, and it's very, very low budget, and we just got our first offer on In Demand. So it'll be on In Demand in October. We're still talking to some people for theatrical distribution, and then they'll kind of roll it out. You know, these small movies, I'm sure you know very well. You know very well with your projects. So it's a constant thing. It's like raising money, raising money, raising money. I mean, I think we still are. I think my cousin who helped produce it. The producers were Emerson Collins and Dale, and then my cousin in Atlanta and his son and me, and I think he's still raising money. You know, it's just the way it is. And then we did, but we were able to finish it, and now, so we're selling it, so hopefully it'll roll out. Blues for Willadine. I play a battered wife who is a woman of faith also. It's a hard story because it's pretty violent, and unfortunately an all too true story, because believe it or not, 1 out of 4 women in this country are battered, and men too. Their statistics aren't as big, but that does happen in relationship with men too. So it's a very shameful subject. These are forgotten people, and we really need to shine a light on it. And Dell, you know, he loves to shock people. So it's shocking, and the language is shocking, some of the stories are shocking, the violence is shocking. But my theory, and the reason I support him in that kind of thing, is that you have to wake people up sometimes. And you just have to clap your hands loud and say, "Wake up." And so it's not a happy ending, I mean, I'll just tell you, but it is a true ending that happens more than not. The happy endings are much fewer. So hopefully we'll wake people up and be able to do Q's and A's and screenings and discussions, and maybe we can help make a difference, you know. So.
Well, I'm going to open it up to questions. We have 15 minutes left, and I'll take you first.
You've built up quite an impressive resume as a character actress, and I was wondering what role you get recognized most for.
Oh, well, the two I would say are Donnie Darko for sure, and then Sordid Lives for sure. Those would be the top two, I think. And then, you know, yeah, I'd say the rest are pretty much scattered. It's very interesting to me. I love when I see a stranger approaching, because often I can pick out which film it is. Because like Speed, you know, it's definitely the popcorn crowd. People that like popcorn movies, action movies, and then Donnie Darko is, you know, usually quirky people with high IQs, and then Sordid Lives, usually gay people, and usually enthusiastic people. I mean, Sordid Lives are the most enthusiastic of all the fans. In fact, one day I was leaving a thing at the Artist, and this guy completely freaked out. He was just, Beth! Oh my God, Beth! And I knew what he was really sissy, hickey that he loved. You know, I knew that was not about me. And but I love the enthusiasm, and you know, it's. But what I love about Donnie Darko and Sordid Lives is like a Venn diagram, because there's this section in the middle that are the, you know, it's the same, the audiences cross over. And I love that. I think that's really cool. So sometimes I miss them because of that, you know, it's like they cross over. But it's a very interesting thing, audience, and what films are people's favorite, and they watch them so many times.
Yes.
I mean, people have seen Speed 100 times,
Yeah.
Sordid Lives 100 times, Donnie Darko 100 times. Even Time to Kill, people watch over and over again. It's interesting. Not all films are like that, but certain iconic films.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Little Miss Sunshine, they watch over. One of my favorites is No Country for Old Men.
Yes.
And I've watched that 15 times, easy. And that's a Bible story. People say it's so violent. I say, have you read the Bible? Maybe not. Because, you know, it is the story for me. I don't know what, you know, Cormac McCarthy was writing, that it's God versus the devil fighting over the soul of every man. How could it be more clear? And then at the end, they're talking about that far and him going on forever. And I mean, to me, it's like going to Sunday school watching that movie. So that violence doesn't bother me at all. The violence I don't like, and I won't do those movies, is the gratuitous violence. But if there's a story or a lesson of some kind, or even humor, if it's entertaining, if you know the lessons like guised under that, I can go for it. But I just don't like the gratuitous stuff. So. Yes, ma'am.
Was the artist, the story, was that based on some real characters, some people that really?
Is it based on that true story?
It was. It was based on a lot of different filmmakers. This French director, ironically, it's the most American movie that has ever been made, and it's the only film of the 9 films that was shot completely in Los Angeles. And 68 actors in Los Angeles were hired. Los Angeles crew. And one of the stars, and I think Harold Lloyd maybe is he the one? Was one of the great silent stars that it was loosely based on. But it was based on a lot of different films. So there's a little bit, he's got an homage to all of his favorite filmmakers.
The director was French, right?
He was French.
And was the DP French?
Yeah, the DP was French.
Was it hard to communicate on set?
Well, you know, it's funny because a lot of people did ask that, and it is a great quote, because of course, how could you do it? But it's a silent film, and he is very expressive, and his English is quite good, the director's too. But he's also, he would act out, you know, what we were supposed to do with his hands, and so it made it very easy, really. And all of them were so expressive, because the French, you know, use their hands a lot. So, and I loved them all, and the DP had pretty good English. Jean did not, but anything I had to say to him, I said through the director. And mostly what I was saying is, will you please tell him how brilliant he is? Because I had never heard of